She looked right at me and called me nothing, Joseph enough that her champagne glass gave a little tremble in her hand. Oddly enough, the guy she's about to marry? He used a ruling I made on tenant rights to get his first big publication. His name's James Milton, age 52. Yeah, that's me. Still keep the old judge's pin in the pocket of my coat. Ever been cut out by your own blood, only to get a nod of respect from a complete stranger? That's the kind of twist life throws at you. When the wedding invite showed up, it didn't even have my name. Just, Miss Mary Milton and fiancé cordially invite you to share in their joy. No, dear James. Not even to my brother. Just a cold, impersonal square of laser-printed paper, folded up and tucked into one of those thick, shimmery envelopes that carry the faint smell of someone else's cologne, the type you might find behind a hotel concierge desk. The message was clear. This isn't really for you, but we're sending it anyway. I didn't even touch it until the evening. It had arrived the day before and spent the night untouched, sitting next to my elbow on the desk, wedged between a framed commendation from the North Carolina Bar Association and a brass letter opener I hadn't used since paper still felt urgent. My office, once filled with the soft shuffle of briefs and the scratch of pens on legal pads, had long since gone quiet. Not peaceful. Just that hollow, heavy silence that settles in over time and never quite lets go. Eventually, I slid my thumb under the envelope flap and opened it. Inside was the formal invitation. And inside that? A smaller cream-colored card, handwritten in cursive I knew too well. It read, "Please don't ruin her day. Just stay away. Mom." I read it again. And again. 3 times, hoping somehow the words might melt into something softer. But they sat there, stiff and unforgiving, exactly how her voice had always sounded. 10 years back, I took the stand against one of my father's close friends. A man with influence and power, who turned out to be the kind of predator folks whisper about but never confront. Afterward, Mom called me from the porch. She didn't raise her voice, didn't cry. She just said, "We don't air our shame in courtrooms, James." Then she shut the door. "No, I raised you better. No, I'm proud of you." Not even a whisper of regret. Just that single sentence and the sound of the latch catching. That was the last real thing she ever said to me. And now here I was, standing in front of that memory like it was a solid object, as real and worn as the old leather chair behind my desk. I brushed my fingers over a stack of unopened mail, junk flyers, overdue bills, and empty promises folded in paper. But beneath it all was one envelope I'd never thrown out. Slightly yellowed, addressed in the confident, slanted script of a man who'd passed away 2 springs ago, Judge John. He wasn't blood, not officially. But if fatherhood could be measured in wisdom and decency, he'd have topped my dad without breaking a sweat. I reopened the letter, though I knew every word by heart. He had written, "Silence isn't always peace, James. Some legacies are born in the quiet." He sent that to me a year before he died, after I'd turned down an invite to speak at a legal conference that now carried my name. I never responded. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. Sorry, I'm the guy who told the T. Charles Joseph enough to lose his family? Didn't quite roll off the tongue. My eyes drifted to the corner of the desk, where a small navy blue box had been waiting patiently. I reached for it like it might break, carefully, gently. Inside, resting in soft blue velvet, was my old judicial pin. The same one Judge Carter pressed into my hand after my very first swearing-in. I hadn't worn it since the tribunal, the day they reminded me that justice and family don't always sit in the same pew. I laid the pin flat on the desk, dead center. Took a breath that felt like it belonged to someone else, then opened my laptop and typed, "Michael Law Firm, Asheville." The search loaded quickly. Civil rights attorney. Guest lecturer. Published all over. One article stood out. I clicked. The title read, "We the People Still Means Us." I started reading, expecting the usual buzzwords, equity, impact, legal precedent. But halfway through, I saw something I hadn't read in over a decade. Justice isn't the Joseph Dust gavel in the room. It's the one that makes space for someone else's silence. Honorable James R. Milton, State v. Lindstrom, 2011. I blinked not because I was surprised, but because those words didn't feel like mine anymore. They read like something quoted from someone else's sermon. Like scripture pulled from a version of me that I'd packed away with all the old diplomas, newspaper clippings, and cards that never started with "Dear Brother." I closed the browser, but by then I already knew I was going. At the rehearsal dinner, they had name cards for every guest. Except me. Mine was just a blank, cream-colored tent card, folded neatly and placed in front of a plate like someone wasn't sure I'd show. But whoever set it down took their time. The fold was clean. The card's talk matched the rest. Still, no name. No James. No Judge Milton. Just a silent suggestion that I wasn't meant to belong. I ran my thumb along the edge of the card, then sat. The chair was stiff, probably a rental, but it held me like it didn't expect me to stick around. The dinner was held at a converted vineyard about half an hour outside Asheville. String lights stretched overhead like someone tried to pin stars into place. Long tables. Empty wine barrels. Everything was picture perfect. The tablecloths were spotless white. Plates were heavy ceramic. The hors d'oeuvres floated by on wooden trays, shrimp cocktail, deviled eggs, little cheese balls dusted with red paprika. None of it was offered to me. I didn't expect it to be. A server drifted by, carrying champagne flutes. I gave a small shake of my head. He caught it, gave a polite nod, and kept moving. 2 seats down, one of my cousins, hadn't seen her since Mary's graduation, glanced over. She squinted, like she half recognized me. Her mouth opened like she might ask something, but then she turned back around without a word. I straightened my tie before stepping in. Dark navy suit, white shirt, no tie clip. Clean. Simple. The kind of outfit that slides under the radar. Just polished enough to suggest I might be a cousin from out west, or maybe a friendly neighbor from one of those zip codes where lawns get manicured on schedule. Not far from the head table, I spotted Mary. She moved like she'd been coached for a lifestyle ad, light steps, flawless smile, touching arms, brushing shoulders. Polite. Polished. The perfect southern cocktail of hospitality and iron. She laughed at just the right moments, nodded like she meant it, then floated on to the next group. Not once did her eyes drift toward mine. I looked back down at the setting in front of me, fork, knife, and that blank tent card. The menu was embossed, "Welcome dinner for Mary and Michael, March 2024. My name wasn't printed anywhere. Not a trace. But I'd seen this before, not this dinner, not this vineyard. I'd seen the blankness. There was a photo once, Mary's college graduation. It used to hang in the family hallway, back before I stopped showing up. Everyone was in it. Mom, Dad, aunts, uncles, and Mary in her cap and gown. I'd been there too, standing at the edge with a hand on her shoulder and the other in my pocket. When that photo made it online later, my arm made the cut, but my face didn't. Cropped out. When I asked her about it, she said, "Oh, that was just for the Instagram layout. You know how the format works." I nodded then. Same way I nodded now. Across the table, a woman whispered, "Who is that guy?" Another voice answered, "He looks familiar. Think he's with Michael." A server came up and gently placed a plate in front of me, deviled eggs and a couple shrimp. I hadn't ordered anything, but he lingered a second too long. His hands were twitchy, unsure. Then he muttered, "Mr. Milton," before quickly correcting himself. "I mean, sir, sorry." I looked up and met his eyes. "No worries." He nodded, flustered, and shuffled off. I picked up a deviled egg with my fork, turned it once, then set it back down. Appetite wasn't part of the evening for me. Toward the edge of the room, Michael was standing next to one of his groomsmen. He looked relaxed, casual, but his eyes were locked right on me. And when I met his stare, he didn't look away. Instead, he leaned over and said something short and sharp to the guy beside him. Then he gave a slight nod and turned back toward me. I held his gaze for a moment, then dropped my eyes to the plate in front of me. Still no name card. Just that folded blank. But something had changed. I didn't feel invisible anymore. And then I heard him say it. Judge Milton. The entire table froze. Even the musicians fell quiet, their bowstrings pausing midair. The ice in Mary's glass didn't melt. It felt like even that had stopped. I had been mid-sip, swirling the wine like someone trying to look calm. The glass never reached my lips. I just tilted it slightly, watching the chandelier reflect in the liquid, a warped little halo hanging above a crowd of people trying too hard to look perfect. The private dining room looked like it had been plucked straight from a glossy magazine spread. Tall windows framed Asheville's skyline, glowing in soft city light. The color palette, navy and blush, was all elegance and quiet ambition. At the heart of it was a long, polished mahogany table, lined with crisp name cards, flower arrangements of pale pink roses, and carefully placed candles flickering like they'd been told to behave. Except for my seat. My card still had no name, just reserved. Mary sat a few chairs to my left, right beside our mother. Patricia had on a pearl brooch and the same tight expression she wore the day I told her I was skipping the family business and heading to law school. She hadn't spoken to me since I arrived. Her fork hadn't moved. Her napkin sat on her lap like it had been ironed into place. I hadn't expected warmth, but I also hadn't expected her silence to be so sharp, so cold it felt deliberate. Then Michael stood up, glass in hand, and cleared his throat for a toast. His voice was even, practiced. He swept the room slowly with his gaze. I just want to say how grateful I am to all of you for being here tonight, he began. Some of you have been with us from the very beginning. Others, I'm just getting the honor of knowing. Then he paused, just long enough, and looked right at me. When I was in law school, there was this one case I couldn't stop thinking about: tenant rights. The ruling was tight, clean, powerful. It ended up in the Harvard Law Review. I remember reading it and thinking, this guy doesn't just read laws, he understands people. The author was listed as Judge D. Milton. He didn't blink. Just asked, that wouldn't happen to be you, would it? There it was. Mary tensed like someone had opened a window in winter. Her hand gripped her wine glass. I noticed a smudge of lipstick at the corner of her mouth, tiny, but enough to show the crack in the veneer. You could feel the room holding its breath. I didn't smile, didn't twitch. I raised my glass to Michael and said, calm as anything, you've got excellent taste in legal reading. A ripple ran through the table, soft whispers, like stones skipping across a lake. He's a judge? Did you know? I thought Mary said he was gone. Mary shot out of her seat like she'd been struck. The legs of her chair screeched against the hardwood. He's nothing. He's nobody, she said. Her voice had that frayed edge, too Josephed, too fast, not quite holding together. And, just like that, the chatter vanished. All eyes swung toward me again. I set my glass down, no rush, no reaction. Then, clear and steady, I said, funny thing. Being nobody still got me into the Harvard Law Review. A fork clinked in the distance. Someone let out a sharp breath. One of my cousins looked down, like maybe now they were seeing me for the first time in years. Mary's face flushed, not with shame, but with panic. She reached for her glass and missed. Champagne spilled across the white tablecloth and trickled toward the roses like it was trying to make a run for it. She muttered something under her breath, grabbed a napkin, and started blotting the spill like she could undo the moment if she just worked fast enough. Then she turned and walked out. No apology. No second glance. The string quartet picked back up like they were trying to smooth over the tension with a little background grace. Patricia kept her head down, lips pressed into a line, hands folded like she was praying for a version of this evening that didn't happen. Michael stayed standing, still looking at me. He didn't say a word. Didn't need to. His toast was finished. But something else had clearly started. I looked around the table at the same faces that had once cut me out, blurred me in photos, lowered their voices when they mentioned my name. And now here they were, watching me like I'd just rewritten every lie they'd let themselves believe, all without raising my voice. Sometimes, the Joseph-esque thing you can do is let silence say everything for you. By 8 in the morning, my inbox looked like a crime scene. Link after link, headlines screaming in bold like they wanted a reaction. Judge Milton, hero or hypocrite? Anonymous sources speak out. Why the Milton family cut ties? Even Reddit had gotten in on it. There I was, pinned between crackpot theories and low-effort memes. Someone had even photoshopped me at a podium with devil horns. Real classy. Rain was tapping steadily at the courthouse windows like a drummer keeping time. Outside, the city shimmered under a slick blanket of fog, the kind that makes everything look both freshly washed and quietly condemned. Inside my office, everything held steady. Same leather chair. Same scent of old legal texts and hot coffee. One folder sat open on my desk, untouched. The only thing Josepher than the rain was the steady ping of news alerts stacking up like bad bets. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands, and took it in. The hit job wasn't subtle, but it had reach. A few stale allegations about a mistrial from over 15 years ago, accusations already discredited, were being recycled by blogs that fed on outrage like it was oxygen. It wasn't random. It was calculated. I thought about something I once told a law student who'd been afraid to file a harassment complaint against her professor. If your Charles threatens someone's illusion, they'll come after you with fiction. And now here we were. My phone buzzed. Elizabeth. Morning, I answered. You've seen it, she said, skipping past hello. Yep. Flagged the top 5 already. Question is, do we hit back or let it rot on its own? Her silence said she was weighing options. When she finally spoke, her voice was tight, too much caffeine mixed with a quiet, protective fury. Elizabeth wasn't just my communications advisor. She was the kind of fire you brought in when your reputation was burning down. We respond, I told her. No anger. Just facts. There was a pause. Then she said, that's why I stayed. By 9:30, I had a one-page statement ready. No emojis. No trending hashtags. Just the facts. Official dismissal of past claims, a copy of the ethics board's letter from a decade ago, quotes from 3 respected colleagues, and a scan of the Innocence Project award they gave me after I helped overturn 2 wrongful convictions. At the bottom, in small print, I added a line. Facts are stubborn things. John Adams. I didn't post it to my personal account. Elizabeth quietly uploaded it to the courthouse's public transparency portal. No spin. No fireworks. Just steady hands on the Charles. By noon, the air started to shift. The comments under the worst hit pieces weren't full of bots or PR fluff. They were real people, saying real things no media team could fabricate. Judge Milton looked me in the eye when I was terrified and couldn't speak. He came to my son's funeral. He didn't have to. You don't erase a man like that with rumors. Some were old clients. Others were students, past clerks. One was from a man I'd once sentenced. He wrote he gave me time, but he also gave me dignity. He told me I mattered before he handed down the years. That made me stop everything. Just sat there with it. Later, a colleague poked his head into my office, uncomfortable, trying to sound helpful. You want me to write a rebuttal for the law journal? I shook my head. Already handled. He blinked like I was speaking a language he didn't know. I guess if all you've ever known is defense, it's hard to recognize dignity when it walks in quietly. The rain kept falling. The city kept humming. Then my phone buzzed again. No name. Just a number I didn't know. One line. You made your point. Now stay away. I looked at the message for a while. Didn't flinch. Didn't reply. I just flipped the phone over, leaned back, and let the silence settle in like it was supposed to be there. They'd arranged the ceremony in a circle. Chairs wrapped in ivory fabric, positioned perfectly like flower petals. Each one had a name tag: Aunt Charles, Cousin Thomas, Uncle Joseph, even second cousins I hadn't seen since the Obama years. Except one. The seat farthest from the aisle, tucked in the shade under a birch tree, had no name at all. Just a neatly folded napkin resting on the cushion like a hush. I took it without hesitation. The garden was quiet in the way only money can buy, curated stillness, manufactured calm. Light poured gold across floral arrangements, blush roses, eucalyptus sprigs, while soft classical music drifted from somewhere unseen. It might have passed for peace if I hadn't lived through the noise. People glanced at me from behind their smiles, quick flickers, like camera shutters. My cousin Isaac leaned over to her husband, whispered something, and he nodded without bothering to look. A few others saw me, considered coming over, then thought better of it. I wasn't part of the script, and no one had rehearsed what to say to me. I crossed one leg, folded my hands on my knee. No need to perform. The officiant started listing the family members who'd helped put the day together. The guy had a beard too neat to be honest. "We'd like to thank those who made this celebration possible," he said, voice warm and polished. He mentioned Patricia, named Mary's college roommate, gave Aunt Charles 2 shout-outs, apparently forgetting he'd already said her name. He didn't say mine. Didn't need to. The silence did the job with professional precision. Michael stood up front, fingers laced, holding a small, folded sheet of paper. Mary was next to him, her smile fixed like it had been applied with a brush. She looked like something out of a bridal magazine, elegant, poised, and just a little breakable. At one point, she looked at me. Brief. Direct. Then her gaze slid away before it could land. It wasn't fear. It was self-preservation. The look of someone seeing a reflection and deciding not to recognize it. The speeches rolled on, each one warmer than the last, well-practiced smiles, memories dusted off and polished for the occasion. Someone's uncle said Mary had always been the calm one in the family, the great mediator, even as a kid. Another joked about her solving monopoly arguments like she was running the Supreme Court. I nursed my water, watching the sky turn amber, the sun sliding low enough to make the rose petals glow like thin skin, lit from behind, on the verge of vanishing. Then Michael stepped forward, holding a folded piece of paper like it was something sacred. He looked at Mary for a moment, then scanned the crowd. His eyes stopped when they met mine. "I didn't have a steady male figure growing up," he said, measured and clear. "But in law school, I read a decision that completely changed the way I thought about fairness, about justice." He paused, letting the words breathe. It was a case on tenant rights, about how systems quietly fail the people they're supposed to protect. The author wasn't someone famous, not someone I'd ever heard of. But the ruling, it had guts. It had grace. Another beat passed. That judge was James Milton. "Wherever you are, thank you." Silence followed, but it wasn't awkward. It was tight and sharp, like a string pulled too far. Like everyone was waiting for something to snap. Mary went still. Then her breath hitched barely, but I heard it. Without a word, she stepped off the stage. Didn't look at Michael. Didn't look at anyone. Just walked, head high, shoulders back, straight toward me. She had something in her hand. A small envelope. Nobody moved. You could hear the sound of stillness, forks frozen midair, glasses half lifted, even the breeze seemed to pull back. She stopped in front of me and placed the envelope in my lap with such quiet control, it felt surgical. No eye contact. No explanation. She turned and walked away like she'd just returned a borrowed item, not dropped a grenade. The officiant cleared his throat, trying to restart the room. Somewhere behind me, a fork clinked against porcelain. Someone muttered something under their breath, and it vanished into the air like smoke. I didn't open the envelope right away. I waited. Later, when I did, all it held was a single photograph. No note. No handwriting. No explanation. It was from my father's 60th birthday, the last big family gathering I showed up for before the fracture. I remembered the real version. The long table, the cake slightly crooked, my mother in her pearls, Mary mid-laugh. And me? I'd been there. But when the photo went online later, I was gone, cropped out. Deleted like a typo. Except this time, I was there again. Not cut. Not blurred. Just there. Standing next to Uncle Joseph, shoulder to shoulder with Mary. Smiling. The kind of smile you only notice in hindsight. The kind that never felt big in the moment, but caught in the lens anyway. I don't know who still had the original. I don't know if this was regret, or nostalgia, or something she couldn't bring herself to say out Josephed. But it was enough. Back in Raleigh, I left the photo on the corner of my desk, just beside the notes for the Judicial Summit. Elizabeth was finishing the last press kits. "You've got 5 minutes," she said, checking her watch, then me. "They added overflow seating." I nodded. She hesitated, then softened her tone. "Your name's on the banner, you know." "Yeah," I said. "Saw it. Took a picture. Didn't share it." She smiled faintly and let the door close behind her. Alone in the green room, I fixed my tie, not because it needed it, but because rituals have a way of sticking, even when everything else breaks loose. Behind me hung a wall of portraits, keynote speakers from past years. Faces framed in reverence. Judges, writers, reformers. People whose words had left footprints. I knew a few of them. Learned from some. John's photo wasn't there, but his words were still with me. Some legacies, James, aren't filed in archives. They live in who we become. The room filled quickly. Chairs shuffled. The energy shifted. That hush before a speech, the kind that lets you know people are ready to listen. Nobody brought up the hit pieces. Nobody mentioned Mary. Nobody asked me to explain myself. So I didn't. I just said what needed saying. The law remembers what people try to scrub away. Families rewrite names. Institutions do, too. But the measure that matters isn't reputation or title, it's whether you showed up. Whether you chose what was right, even when no one was asking you to. And then I stopped. No F. Joseph Risch. Just T. Charles. Heads nodded. A few people dabbed at their eyes. I didn't scan the crowd, but I noticed her, a young woman near the back. Brown curls, a public defender badge clipped to her lapel. She came up to me after the session, walking like she carried more than her own weight. "Judge Milton," she said, voice catching. "The Thompson ruling, because of you, my client kept her home. And I stayed in law school." I looked at her. Really looked. And saw what I used to carry. Not just hope. Fire. She was going to outlast me. I reached into my coat, pulled out the old judicial pin I hadn't worn since the day they told me I'd tarnished the bench. I placed it in her hand. "Keep it," I said. "Wear it when you start to forget why you're in this." She nodded, eyes wet, throat tight. Couldn't speak. The applause that followed wasn't Josephed. It didn't shake the walls. But it was real. It was enough. I didn't hang around for photos or firm handshakes. Didn't loiter by the coffee or swap business cards. I just stepped out into the evening. No headlines. No cameras. Just the sound of my own footsteps on pavement and the photograph resting over my heart. Not known by everyone, but remembered by someone. And sometimes that's all it takes to know you were there, even when they tried to erase you. I've come to understand something. Silence isn't surrender. And dignity doesn't beg for applause. Family won't always tell the T. Charles, but we can live it. And for me, for today, that's enough. If something in this story felt familiar to you, felt like a bruise you'd forgotten how to name, you're not alone. You were there too.